Hey everybody, this is Jeff Newton. I know I'm a day late on the James Comey thing, but a lot had been said about it, and I just have one thought that I really want you guys to think about. First of all, former 60 Minutes producer and former senior producer at Vice on HBO, National Geographic, so let's get after it. James Comey. Okay, this is a former FBI director, right? And Kash Patel, the current so-called FBI director, said he spent a year investigating this, which is basically, I'm just going to put it in a nutshell. A dude wrote a message on a beach in Seychelles that said 8647, which Kash Patel and all of his investigative wisdom, a year's worth of investigating, has determined that that's a threat against the President of the United States. That means James Comey, the former FBI director, the guy that was in a spot and did it a lot better than he did, wants to kill the president. He threatened him, right? So the other day, an assassin ran through and tried to kill the president, ran through some security, some lax security, had a shotgun and a sidearm and some knives. He ran on through and he said he was going to kill the president and all of his cabinet members and anybody else that got in his way. James Comey used some seashells and wrote a message. And Kash Patel spent the last year trying to investigate this. This of all things, Kash Patel and his staff investigated. So basically we have a guy who's a dude on a beach using seashells to send a message. Now Comey said that wasn't a threat against the president. It was more of a, he taking it sort of like a, get rid of Trump. Not get rid of Trump, but like get rid of him. Not get rid of him, but get rid of him. You know what I mean? Not like President Trump. President Trump perceives that as a mafia message because why? Because President Trump is a mafia type of guy. So you always see something as like, but he doesn't really believe this. Okay. We know that President Trump doesn't believe this. And we know the FBI doesn't believe any of this shit either. And here's why. James Comey's not arrested. He turned himself in. He had a hearing today and they let him go. Think about that. He's a threat to the president of the United States. His message means he wants to kill him. But let's let him go until his next hearing. And by the way, let's let him stay on the streets for the last year because he's so dangerous. The guy's so dangerous that we're just going to leave him on the streets for a year. Okay, because that's when they started investigating this in May of 2025. A threat. This guy's a maniac. Let's leave him on the streets. And then today, when they finally get him in there to answer to these charges, they have a little 10-minute hearing, and then they let him go. Right? So let's think about that. Judge William Fitzpatrick, he was in Alexandria, Virginia today, okay, in court. And the hearing lasted a very short period of time. He left no conditions of release, none. Just let him out. And Judge William Fitzpatrick said, quote, "I don't see why they'd be necessary this time." Because he went through this bullshit once before with the FBI. So maybe there's all sorts of crazy evidence that they found on his computer that suggests he was going to kill the president. And maybe he had like guns and bombs in his house. Because that's what you'd find after a year-long investigation, right? They went through his computer records, and he was like typing in how to kill a president, right? What he's charged with: knowingly and willfully making a threat to take the life of or inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States. He made the threat, right? So if he's you'd think you put him in, wouldn't you put a guy, if he's threatening the president of the free world, wouldn't you keep him behind bars until you were sure he wasn't? You would, wouldn't you? You'd do that. You got guys in bushes with guns down in Mar-a-Lago that are serving sentences already, right? Because, okay. So count one, that was count one. Count two, knowingly and willfully transmitting a communication in interstate and foreign commerce containing a threat to kill the President Trump. Willfully transmitting a communication in interstate and foreign commerce. So he sent the picture, I guess it was posted on Instagram. So that's the threat. He put it on Instagram, social media. So he's threatening the president on social media, the former FBI director, who, by the way, was a Republican. Boy, they really love to eat their own, don't they? Okay. I think it's interesting. Patel framed the investigation as no different than any other case. We believe that. It's no different than any other case. Because we know that when it comes to this kind of stuff, he takes forever to investigate, right? Like the two ICE guys who shot the American citizens in Minneapolis. He's going to investigate that for years, because that's even more complicated than this one. He's going to investigate it for years. And we know that he takes a lot of time investigating these really serious crimes, because with what is it? Millions of pages, 3 million pages released on the Epstein files, the Department of Justice has released, with another 1.5 million to 3 million still out there. He said in front of Congress, under oath, that if there were any crimes at all, he charged them like that day, right? Or he said that day or tomorrow. Well, I can't remember exactly how I said it. It was one of those, but that's what he said. So we know it takes him a long time to investigate crimes, even ones where the women are saying we were raped. So it's just Kash the way he works. He works slow. This gives me hope for the Epstein files, because it means they're probably investigating all these crimes. Because if it takes that long to figure out if you're going to charge a guy for a seashell message on the beach, and you're using government resources for a year to figure this out, imagine how long it's going to take him to figure out if these women were actually raped with their testimonies right in his hands. Does this seem like a little bit of misplaced priority? Maybe a little bit. Like, maybe we should be concentrating on stuff like that, like the Epstein cases, and maybe if the president was doing stuff with young girls, maybe, but no. And the interesting part is that it's not just Kash, it's this new interim guy, right? It's this new interim guy, Todd Blanche, the deputy guy who used to be a Trump lawyer and defended him in the hiding of the classified documents case that's now under seal, and most people think will never be seen again, because the Trump-appointed judge, Aileen Connor, she buried it. So we don't really know. We don't know what their priorities are, really, but we know that Todd Blanche, who worked for him in that case, we know that Todd is now going to be, he's hoping to become full-time Attorney General. And he's writing memos all over the place about this stuff. The ballroom is one of his next priorities as well. Not the Epstein files. He said, when he first took over this interim job, that we're not going to talk about that stuff anymore. It's passé. It's gone, long gone, the Epstein file case. We don't need to prosecute or think about any of that stuff. He's going to concentrate on the important stuff, the nation's important stuff, like a seashell message. Oh, fuck. Oh. Eileen Cannon. Sorry, I got her name wrong. Judge Eileen Cannon. Why did I say Connor? I don't know. So James Comey. So here's what Kash said. Framed the investigation no different than any other case, saying every investigation the FBI undertakes involves threats to harm individuals, whether they hold public office or civilians, is handled in the same way, same investigative tools and personnel. He said, quote, James Comey allegedly threatened the life of the president of the United States. And as you know, shortly after posting that threat, he deleted that threat and then issued an apology. All of that information was presented to the grand jury. Well, that's interesting. Kash, you're not really supposed to talk about what information was presented to a grand jury. You just violated the rules of the grand jury. I'm pretty sure, I'm not a lawyer, but grand jury testimony is secret. Woo, I hope you investigate that and take the next year figuring out whether you actually said that or not in the press conference where we taped it. Any and all information was presented to the grand jury. Mr. Comey will have his day in court and his ability to speak to a jury of his peers. Aw, that's sweet. That's so sweet. And then he wrote later on social media, James Comey disgracefully encouraged a threat on the president's life and posted on Instagram for the world to see. Sounds very scary to me. Posted that. I mean, there's nothing terrorists and assassins love more than to intimidate people with seashells and sand while they're on vacation. Oh, man. The FBI and our DOJ partners, see, pursued a rigorous investigation that followed the facts. Now Mr. Comey will be held accountable for his actions. I say get him off the streets. Get him, because if it's so serious, Kash, get him off the street. Don't leave this where he might bum rush the president. The former FBI director might kill the president, because you know that's what you're scared of, right? Because that's why you charged him, but you haven't put him in jail. Okay, Representative Dan Muser. I've never heard of the guy, but he's a Republican from Pennsylvania. Muser. He criticized former FBI Director James Comey after he was indicted. He basically said that there's something called dangerous speak, which is interesting because there's nothing called dangerous speak. There is something in international law called dangerous speech, but there's no legal definition in the United States for a term called dangerous speak. We actually have something instead we like to refer to called the First fucking Amendment. I put it fucking in there for emphasis. But the First Amendment allows people to say all sorts of things, like get rid of this president. We don't like him. See, let me give you an example. My First Amendment right lets me say the president's an idiot and Todd Blanche is a moron and Kash Patel is an idiot as well. See, that's protected speech. What I couldn't say is something like, I want this person dead. I want that person dead. You know, I'm going to kill this person. I'm going to kill that person. I'm not saying that. This is like a teaching lesson, everybody. I'm telling you the difference between protected speech and threats. Threats would be like, I want to kill this guy. And as opposed to like, here's some seashells and we shouldn't have him running our government anymore. You see the difference? One's like a threat and one's like not a threat, you see? But we're going to figure this out. And I imagine that they're going to have this case down in North Carolina. For some reason, they charged him down in North Carolina. Apparently that's where the seashells were. So they figure it's appropriate. Has nothing to do with they think they might get better judges down in North Carolina than Washington, D.C. or, in Arlington, Virginia or somewhere like that. That has nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? They're just trying to do it in the right, appropriate location. And plus those judges down in North Carolina, they understand the seashell thing because it's their coast. Outer Banks, they get the seashell threats. Yeah. So Mr. Muser, he says that, that he also said that when the former FBI director my handwriting sucks. When the former FBI director writes in sand 86-47, which means kill the 47th president, this is concerning. It's not concerning because he wasn't trying to say to kill. You could go back and look over the interviews that they asked him about it, and he said, I didn't mean that at all. So it's weird how all these other people are inside James Comer's head, assuming that what he was saying was what they think he's saying, when he in fact said that's not what he was saying. Isn't that weird how they can mind read? A jury's going to have a hard time figuring this out because the FBI is so wise. They have these mind reading tools so they can charge them with crimes. Here's what's really interesting, though. They've decided in the last 24 hours or so that Pam Bondi, who was fired April 2nd because she's such a shitty person at her job, and they replaced him with the other shitty guy who's just going to be even more shitty, Todd Blanche. She was originally scheduled to be in front of Congress, the House Oversight and Government Committee, Government Reform Committee, on April 14th. And she didn't show up. And they didn't subpoena. She was not, she's like, I'm just going to have a little quick meeting and you don't need to subpoena me. But they did subpoena her. And now they're holding her to this subpoena. And it's a civil action. And if she doesn't show up, she'd be in a lot of trouble. So now she's agreed on May 29th to a closed door meeting. James Comer, not to be confused with James Comey, the former FBI director. James Comer is this redneck from Kentucky who is doing his best to slow walk as much Epstein stuff as he can. And so the way he does that is he has a lot of closed door meetings where the public can't actually hear what we know about the Epstein files because it's in closed door session. And he tells people don't worry about subpoenas. You can just come talk to me so that they can avoid being under oath. So now she's going to be under oath. If she shows up, we don't know. I'm sure she's, got some tricks up her sleeve between now and then. But that's actually more interesting news because this other thing's going to get thrown the fuck out of court because we have First Amendment rights to say a lot of stuff. And unless you're directly threatening somebody, they're not gonna charge. You can't charge somebody with a crime for this. There was a Republican douchebag who was selling the same same thing on his shirt. They haven't charged him. Right? Like he was selling shirts that said 8647. Right. So we're looking forward to put that date on your calendar, May 29th. In fact, I'm going to have a group of people up here at the cabins that time, all a bunch of journalists, all hanging out, talking about this kind of stuff. They'll be up here that weekend. It's going to be great because then we'll have had a chance to listen to what Pam Bondi had to say. And I'm sure it'll be interesting. She never hides things or lies, right? But this time she'll be under oath. So if she lies, right? And I don't mean kill her. I just mean she's going to be in trouble legally. See the difference? Legal trouble. Pew, pew, killing. Don't want to kill people. We beat people through elections from the Writers' Cabin. From the Writers' Cabin believes in beating the shit out of people with elections and lawsuits and things like that. So we're big supporters of that. Anyways, George is here. I don't know if you could see him down there. If you like what we're doing, like, follow, and share. George gets one of my cookies. Already had my coffee. No slurping today, but there's George. Is it good likeness? I think it is. Like, follow, and share. Meet us at From the Writers' Cabin on our Substack. It's called From the Writers' Cabin, where you can get an annual subscription for $80 or $8 a month, which we love because we're having to buy a bunch of subscriptions and everything to keep up the news. So come and see us there. And every now and then, if you're bored with what I have to say, you can watch George eat his cookies. Right, Georgie? There we go. Anyways, you guys have a great night, and we'll see you on the flip side. Take care. Good night, everybody.